Hey guys, Mr. Jalapeno here with another episode of Jalapeno Drywall. And on today's project, as you can clearly see, there's a big hole in the ceiling here in the closet. The homeowners were going to put an attic access there, but they decided to relocate it, so I'm going to show you how to patch it up. So first thing you're going to want to do is get your tape measure and measure out the hole. Once you got everything measured out, go ahead and get your utility blade and cut the drywall. But before you start putting up the drywall, make sure you either have some backing or cut the drywall to the next truss or stud. In this case, we're just going to be adding some wood backing. Just make sure that when you're screwing into the drywall, not to go too deep in with the screws. And also, since this is the attic, we're going to be using R30 as our insulation. Always make sure that you're using the correct insulation for whatever project you're doing. So now that the insulation is up there, it's time to put up the drywall. Remember, again, try not to go too deep in with your screws. And now that you're done with that, it's time to pre-fill all the seams. I'm going to be using this Easy Sand 5 to pre-fill. A lot of people call it hot mud or quick set. Just add a little bit of water, and then me personally, I like to get it to the consistency of sour cream, or kind of in between like peanut butter to pancake mix consistency, if that makes any sense. If you make it way too watery, a lot of it's probably going to fall, especially if you're working on the ceiling. And by doing this, I'm just making sure that everything's filled correctly and it's not going to crack in the future. And there we go, look, done. Now we can paint it. No, I'm just playing. I'm actually going to take down this containment, that way I have a little bit more room. Whoever was going to install that attic access did that containment so they don't get insulation everywhere. But it was just a little bit too small for me to work comfortably, so I'm just going to put up my own containment. So the next thing you want to do after you're done pre-filling is put some tape on the seams. I'm going to be using this yellow mesh tape for the seams, that way I know nothing's going to crack. And remember earlier in the video how I used Easy Sand 5 for the pre-fill? Well, to cover this patch up, I'm actually going to be using Easy Sand 45. This is going to give me more time to play around with the mud before it starts getting too hard, compared to that Easy Sand 5 where it starts getting hard in like 5 minutes. I'm using my 12-inch to apply the mud, that way I hide that mesh tape. You got to make sure you hide the mesh tape with the mud, that way you're not going to be able to see the patch. Apply the first coat, let it set for a little bit, and then you could apply the second coat. And if you don't have any texture on your walls, it's smooth, then just let it dry, sand it down, prime, and paint it. But you already know I'm here in Colorado, so there's knockdown texture everywhere. There's all kinds of different types of textures, but the one I usually work in is knockdown. And I'm going to be using one of my favorite hoppers to shoot the texture with my pancake compressor here. I usually keep my pressure at about 80 psi. Just make sure that you shoot the texture evenly, that way you don't have big flat spots all around. And once you're done shooting the texture, just make sure it sets for about 10 to 15 minutes before you start knocking down. Oh, and look, this is why it's super important to make sure you plastic everything correctly, that way you don't make a mess. And the homeowners really appreciate this, that way they don't have to take all their stuff out and it's going to be super clean in the end. Anyways, now just let the texture dry overnight and go ahead and paint it. The homeowners didn't have the original paint. I went to color match it, but it didn't match 100%, so I just ended up painting the whole ceiling. And there we go, look, the paint's still drying right now. I ended up doing 2 coats of that flat paint that I grabbed. And if you ever want to get any of the tools or materials I used here in this video, just go to my Amazon storefront. And that's pretty much it. Jalapeno Solutions. Boom!